war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
We, the people, tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. Our Constitution is a document in which we, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do. The man is not free unless government is limited. An informed patriotism is what we want. But still watch closely and don't be afraid to see what you see.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it.
When in hell are all you people going to wake up?
Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report.
Well, hello there. Hello, America. Welcome to the Monday, June 23rd, 2014 edition of Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report, brought to you live from right here at PRN Radio Network, the exclusive home of the Watchmen of America program. I'm Joanne Moretti, and my great co-host JoJo Norton will be here shortly to join me. And we're happy you stuck around, too, and came to join us as well. Our call-in number is 714-888-7404, as always. And our chat rooms, both at Blog Talk Radio and, of course, right here at PRN Radio Network, are open for you, too. Our colleagues, Lynn and Anna and AstroTurf, are in the chat rooms working hard, diligently putting all the links to us, sources and articles and all that stuff into the chat rooms. So you have all of that available to you. And I want to thank you, ladies, for doing that for us. That's a really nice courtesy of you. Our colleagues are much more than just people who put links into the chat rooms, by the way. They are the most amazing researchers I've ever seen. A couple of them even have their own newspapers. But, I mean, there is no document or information they can't find. If they're looking for you, they will find you. If they're looking for your information, they will find you. So kudos to my girls. And also we have a guy on our team. We have a few guys on our team, but one special guy, Scott, he's a graphics guy. He does a really good job on our YouTube channel, which is also called Moretti Underground. And he puts all the graphics in there, and he keeps us going with all his jokes and stuff. So I just wanted to give him a special shout-out today. We have a great show lined up today, and right now we're contending against the IRS hearing. But I understand if you guys are listening to us in one ear and the IRS hearing in the other. Plus, if anything goes on with that hearing, please put it in our chat rooms because I'd love to stay abreast of that. Anyhow, before we start the show, we have to do a disclaimer, and that just tells the FCC and the feds and NSA and anybody else who might be interested that anything that's said on this show is solely my responsibility and not that of our wonderful sponsors, the Watchmen of America or PRN Radio Network. The disclaimer goes like this. The comments made by hosts and or guest hosts or phone callers of the PRN Radio Network do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints, ideology, beliefs, or anything else for that matter, of the members of the Watchmen of America program or the Patriot Resistance website, either in past, present, and even future broadcasts. So, on that note, let's look around, see who's here. I see JoJo's here, so I'm going to open up her microphone. You all know JoJo, my great co-host. Hey, JoJo.
Hello.
Hey, you listening to that IRS hearing?
No,
yeah.
No.
Oh, well, it was pretty good at first. I got it open here, but I'm not listening to it, so Lynn says she's going to keep us posted. And Helen Simon over there at the Moretti Underground, she's monitoring for us, too. But it started out really cool. Isa played a montage of every time that the IRS was asked if they were going to provide the emails, and every time they said, yep, we're going to give them to you, and they were all jaded. And that whole time they knew that those emails were never going to be made available, and if we want them, we're going to have to dig for them. But now it got really contentious. Koskinen, he's the head of the IRS.
Isa happened to bring up that their timeline is kind of screwed up.
He's working on it.
And when they said they had them, all that stuff.
Yeah, he did. He was going date by date and word by word, and he tripped up Koskinen. Now Koskinen is saying, well, they cut the IT funds by $100,000, $100 million, whatever he said. Yeah, well, money was not the issue. No one ever mentioned money until just this minute. And, that must be his out for saying, I'm sure it's leading into why they canceled the contract with, was it Norsoft?
Yes, whatever it was called. Soft.
Yeah, soft.
Soft something.
Yeah, Norsoft or something.
Soft
Anyhow.
serve.
Yeah.
Soft.
Sonasoft. Anyhow, this company is a backup company, and they had the email contract for backing up the emails, and that just miraculously was canceled 6 weeks after Lois Lerner was informed that her emails might be requested. She just had this very convenient hard drive crash. Now, anybody who knows anything about emails, all right, just think of your very own email. If you were at my house and you wanted to get to your email, could you do it?
There.
Yeah, could you do it? You could use my computer,
I'm
you could use your phone.
I'm real low-tech.
Yeah, I'm low-tech too, but I can go on any computer and get my emails, or a telephone, or a tablet, or an iPad, or anything else. Your emails are not stored in your computer. They're stored off-site at a server. So now all the servers all crashed. Plus, I don't know if anybody caught it, but they were mentioning emails that they already have received during that timeline. So was this a selective hard drive crash? It only crashed. It only crashed the emails that were incriminating. But the rest of them you can have. We got those.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Anyhow, we'll get back to that in a little while. Anything you want to bring up before we start the show, Joe?
Well, a couple of things that I found here at the last minute. I'm trying to find it now. Well, just keep talking. I'll interrupt you when I find it.
All right.
Are you going to talk about
the
earthquake?
Well, I'm going to talk about that 8.0 earthquake.
All right.
In Alaska. Yeah. At first they thought it was a 7.1, but it ended up being an 8.0. And in Alaska, it's a bay. They had a tsunami warning, and the last I heard was all the water was leaving the harbor. That's never a good story. They've also had 7 aftershocks of up to 6, magnitude 6. So when I checked, the last one was, about 20 minutes ago, and that was the 7th aftershock after that big one. So it's still rattling up there. Also, there was a 7.2 in Raul, R-A-U-L, Island in New Zealand, too. So there's some earthquakes acting up out there.
Well, actually, there's been 41 today all over the world. There's some, I want to say, around Puerto Rico or somewhere around there, and then all over the place. But these were the big ones, New Zealand and Alaska. And an 8.0 is bound to have a tsunami. And but I think the people that track tsunamis aren't really on top of it. Or they're just not telling us. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I saw a tsunami map, and that's going to hit. I'd be a little concerned if I lived up in the northwest corner of the United States, up in Washington and Oregon area, because looks like they're on an inside that in about 5 hours they're going to feel that. They're going to see some sort of high tide from that. So I'm not sure it's going to be a big tsunami, but on the other hand, they are going to get some big waves coming out of that. So be careful up there in the northwest corner. Glenn Greenwald made news today. He said that a Snowden document release is extremely imminent. I have no idea what he's going to be releasing, but boy, I'm excited. Wouldn't it be sweet if he had Lois Lerner's email?
Yeah, especially if he published them.
Yeah, well, the story over at Truth Revolt, it came from MSNBC, too. Today on MSNBC, Glenn Greenwald told host Ronan Farrow, that's Mia Farrow's kid, that a new document release from Edward Snowden is very imminent and called it one of the most important in the archive. Farrow asked if there were any more disclosures to come that are significant. Greenwald indicated this is definitely the case. Definitely, including one that's very imminent, that I've long considered to be the most important one of the most important in the archive, which is the question of what kind of American citizens are actually being targeted by the NSA for the most invasive kinds of surveillance. Farrow further asked why the documents were being parceled out and released in stages, to which Greenwald answered that they were doing actual journalism, and that is time-consuming. So Greenwald also speculated that Russia would extend Snowden's asylum for at least another year, and stated that other nations are debating offering him asylum. And one, for the foreseeable future, he's safely out of reach of the American penal system. So, Russia's gearing up, too. Russia doesn't trust us a whit.
Oh, speaking of, that's one of the stories I wanted to bring up. And this site I got it from was Global Research. And as far as I know, they're pretty, they're pretty...
Yeah, they're pretty on the money.
It says Russia prepares for an expected U.S. nuclear attack. And it says, this was written today, June 23rd, in response to the Obama administration's Ukrainian coup that replaced the democratically elected pro-Russian president of Russia's neighboring country by a regime that is seeking to join NATO and become a base for U.S. nuclear missiles, Russia is girding for America's unexpected attack. Berko News, it's an organization of journalists based in Crimea, and their headline was, Why is Russia preparing for nuclear war? Basically, and Pat, our buddy Pat, sent me a link to this Berko guy, but you have to translate everything. I'll give that to you later. It says, from the middle of May to early June 2014, Russia undertook 2 large command staff exercises testing the realization of a local nuclear attack. According to military experts, there was never such dense and extensive testing scenarios of nuclear war, even in the Soviet Union. The 12th General Directory of the Ministry of Defense, which is the most secret department, was involved in the exercises. Now, if you listen to us, we've already told you about the coup and how we helped the Ukraine takeover. The U.S. coup in Ukraine, that's what they're calling it. The U.S. coup in Ukraine cannot be understood outside the context of that country's being able and willing now to allow the U.S. to place nuclear missiles right next door to Russia, close enough for a first strike against Moscow to prevent any retaliation by Russia. Our missiles would destroy Russia within 10 minutes of launch, too short a time window for Russia to be able to respond. Well, I don't think we got to go back to the START Treaty, too.
We did enable that coup. As a matter of fact, George Soros, his Renaissance Foundation, as well as our own USAID, were who organized and implemented that coup. Remember, they had a democratically elected pro-Russian president, and he was overthrown. They're playing it off like Russia's overthrowing the Ukraine when he really didn't. The radicals overthrew the Ukraine first.
This guy says, while the U.S. media obsesses with the Iraq war that we created 11 years ago and can't stop, that we aren't really causing right now, they're covering up our current invasion. overseen by our CIA and former Blackwater mercenaries, which Obama and more than $5 billion of U.S. dollars started in February. They said they have, via amateur videos uploaded to YouTube and blah, 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 blah. This reporter says, I shall continue to trying to get the U.S. media, both its major news media and the smaller circulation, alternative news media, to report to the American people what Obama is doing to Ukraine and why. If this matter does not become a major issue during the upcoming Democratic presidential primaries, which will start next year, then there will be no way to avert nuclear war, because Hillary Clinton shares Obama's plan 100% and was part of its operation while she was Secretary of State. No Republican U.S. presidential nominee will oppose an operation to win a nuclear war. Any contender in Republican Party presidential primaries who would oppose it wouldn't stand a chance to win that party's presidential nomination, because being strong on defense is the biggest rally cry to that party's voters, the people who actually vote in Republican Party primaries and so determine its nominee. All right, so this is a look of our politics, how the games are played from the Crimea, from a reporter from over there.
Right.
So.
Well, Russia has a legitimate cause for alarm, because that was the biggest sticking point, was the missile defense shields and putting nuclear weapons, nuclear subs and stuff up in that area. But, Putin's not going to put up with this. So while we're not paying attention to that, things are heating up over there. Phil Kerpen says, Koskinen claims he never heard of the IRS email backup vendor Sonasoft before today, but he knows they have nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't know about them, but he knows they don't have anything. How could he know that?
I don't know. That's why I can't watch all that crap and stuff. Let's go back to the nuclear thing for just a second, because WorldNet Daily put out an exclusive: Iraq invaders threaten nuke attack on Israel. One of our buddies, Jan, sent me this. The well-organized army of the Islamic State of Iraq, ISIS, claims it has access to nuclear weapons and a will to use them to liberate Palestine from Israel as part of its Islamic Spring. Franklin Lamb, an international lawyer based in Beirut and Damascus, said the move is part of the ISIS aim of creating a caliphate under strict Islamic law. Lamb, who has access to ISIS fighters and sympathizers, said ISIS had been working with a new specialized unit organized at the beginning of 2013 to focus exclusively on destroying the Zionist regime occupying Palestine. So basically, they're saying they have nukes and that they will use them if they have to, and that's it in a nutshell. It comes from WorldNet Daily. It says the Islamist organization believes it currently has massive regional support for its rapidly expanding revolution of the oppressed. And they estimate it'll take them 72 months to liberate occupied Palestine. And they're going to go get the Zionists. And
yeah, well, that's
anyway,
the thing.
So ISIS says they have nukes.
Yeah, now see, they keep interchanging the words ISIS and ISIL. ISIS is the Islamic State of Iraq, in Iraq, and the ISIL is the Islamic State in Levant. Now, it's important to know the difference, not the Islamic State in Syria, rather, ISIS. The S is for Syria. I'm sorry, I made that mistake. But ISIL is the Islamic State in Levant. Now, the Levant is way bigger than Syria. It includes Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Tunisia, Turkey, Israel, all of them. That's the whole Middle East, the Levant. That's the caliphate. Obama hasn't referred to them as ISIS. He keeps referring to them as ISIL. Oh, it includes Africa, too. You got to be careful, because I think, Obama, today I saw a story that the Iraqi military has run out of ammunition.
Yeah. They ran out of
missiles to shoot off of planes.
Hellfire missiles, yeah. And airplanes.
And yeah, so that's why there's no planes in the air, and this ISIS is just marching across the whole desert, or going right through Iraq without even being impeded pretty much on their own. Although Israel did strike the border of Syria and Iraq And
well, they went a little further than the border. They went inside of, I don't know how many miles, but they hit a lot of military installations yesterday.
Yeah, well,
of Syria.
Yeah, this isn't looking good. And then Kerry today, the mouthpiece, he says that he's vowing intense support to combat ISIS. So, where is Code Pink and all those crazies? He is talking about intense support. Does anybody know what intense support means?
No, but speaking of intense support, I have to bring this up real quick. This comes from Brett Bart. And a friend of mine that's a retired Army is Obama sending troops who could be prosecuted in Iraqi courts. And this is, I was just blown away. I couldn't believe this, but it's true. When U.S. troops arrive back in Iraq to try to salvage its rapidly deteriorating situation, they have more to worry about than fighting ISIS terrorists. Those soldiers could also face criminal prosecution in Iraqi courts since Obama failed to secure an immunity agreement for American forces. Obama pulled troops out of Iraq in 2011 when he failed to get the Iraqi status of forces agreement. That's called SOFA, part of which would grant American troops immunity from lawsuits, including criminal prosecutions in Iraq's courts. Far from the equal justice under the law that is the hallmark of America's judiciary, Iraq's courts are thoroughly compromised and unreliable. Official immunity is a vitally important protection enjoyed by government officials in America and other nations across the globe. Such absolute immunity is an integral part of conducting foreign relations. Ambassadors are protected by diplomatic immunity, blah, 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 on and on and on. If our guys do anything, they can get arrested. And if we do anything, it would be considered an act of war because we do not have this SOFA agreement. So there goes our rules of engagement again. We're sending God knows how many Marines over there that have no rules of engagement. Once again, no rules of engagement.
Right. But, when he says intense support, that always morphs into, remember we had a no-fly zone in Libya, then all of a sudden we started putting boots on the ground and blowing things up on the ground and stuff. None of that was flying.
Mm-hmm.
The no-fly zone, vehicles don't fly, buildings don't fly, people in groups don't fly. So, guys, intensive support means we're going in somehow, but this is a trap. He has armed ISIS. All of those weapons that were in Libya that were being transported, that we told everybody about over and over and over and over again since Benghazi, that were going to Syria, are now in the hands of ISIS, all right? They put pictures on their pages. We've been following and monitoring the fighters, the ISIS fighters. You got to see the stuff they're posting and the vehicles they have. The Iraqi military is seriously just like dropping their guns, taking off their weapons, and taking off. They're blasting off. So all of those weapons are in the hands of ISIS too. Now, when we put our soldiers there, you think these soldiers are going to fight ISIS on behalf of the United States, on behalf of our soldiers? Those ISIS guys will turn the guns right on our soldiers. You heard of green on blue.
Well, our guys don't have any rules of engagement right now.
Right, so they can't even fire a weapon. We're in trouble, guys. Obama doesn't. He probably never even played Army when he was a kid.
Self-defense thing, but.
And then we hear that Obama wants to work with Iran. Oh, yeah, he wants to work with Iran, and he wants to bring them in, and everybody's flipping out. We didn't need Iran before. We don't need Iran now. Well, you know what? Iran isn't asking for us to join them.
They don't want
Obama's groveling. They don't want us. Iran rejects U.S. action in Iraq. This is from Reuters. Iran's supreme leader accused the United States on Sunday of trying to retake control of Iraq by exploiting sectarian rivalries as Sunni insurgents drove towards Baghdad from new strongholds along the Syrian border. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's condemnation of U.S. actions came 3 days after Obama offered to send 300 military advisors to help the Iraqi government. Khomeini may want to block any U.S. choice of a new prime minister after grumbling in Washington about the Shiite premier Nouri al-Maliki. The supreme leader did not mention the Iranian president's recent suggestion of cooperation with Shiite Tehran's old U.S. adversary in defense of their mutual ally in Baghdad. Well, this sounds really, really fishy to me. I think Obama's given Iran protection, if you want to know the truth. You know, nice country you got over there. Be ashamed if something happened to it. So, Iraq is going to be Sunni shortly. Iran is Shiite. You know, Iran wants Iraq to be a Shiite-controlled country. That's not going to happen. But if it's a Sunni-controlled, then Iran is in trouble. So, I think maybe Obama's offering them protection, and that might be why Israel is being held off.
Well, listen, oh, Lord, I just lost my whole train of thought. Did you see the pictures of Kerry and Malaki standing together in several photos? There is some serious body language going on right there. Al-Malaki, or whatever his name is seriously pissed off.
Oh, Malachi? Yeah.
Yeah, Malachi. Well, I was close. Same number of letters, a little different pronunciation. That's the southern pronunciation of it.
Hey, I don't know if you saw over at Twitter, there was a screwball threatening Obama yesterday.
Yeah, and he's still in. Has the FBI been to his stupid house? Probably not.
No, probably. His page is down now, but it was up all night, but it was gone this afternoon. But he said, Obama, your days are numbered. You have nowhere to hide. Your family is first on our list. We will find you and remove your filthy heads. And then he said, Merhiba to all my Turkish followers, and soon Dalat al-Islamiyah in Iraq will encompass the entire world. So here he is. He's threatening to behead Obama and his family. Well, you know, he mentioned Turkey here. Well, our crew and our new girl, we got a new girl on our crew, too. Her name is Denise. I met her at Twitter. She is very good at finding things, too. She not only found out who he is, she found out where he lives. She found his criminal record. He was busted for selling OxyContins, by the way.
Oh.
Yep. He lives in New Hampshire. He's originally from Everett, Massachusetts. So he's not in Turkey. And what he is a wannabe jihadi in his mind, playing cowboy up there in his backyard in New Hampshire. His page had all kinds of pictures of destruction, and there was 3 pictures on there that were not taken off the web that were uploaded by him. So that's how we knew what his face looked like. And here he is in a wig, and he's got a full beard. He dyed it black. And he's got his head wrapped in one of those kaffa turban type things. Yeah. And, he's standing in front of a New England cobblestone wall and a bit mighty oak tree behind him. Okay, that's not the desert. First of all, just look at the foliage. So
he's an American, right?
Yeah, he's an American. He comes from Everett, Massachusetts. He's not even Arabic. He's Italian. Detilio?
Uh-oh. Oops.
A little too much vino and must have popped an extra OxyContin. He wasn't selling that one. He was going to eat that one.
His cage stayed up for 24 hours. If it had been some grandmother that was in the tea party, she'd be under the jail right now.
Yeah. Well, PM Geller put out a good article about him. Before we get further into this, though, Miriam Ibrahim. She is the Christian woman who was jailed over in Somalia, in the Africa. Well, they freed her today. She was over in the Sudan. And it says here, this is from the Telegraph, a Sudanese woman who was sentenced to death for converting from Islam to Christianity has been released from prison. It has been reported. According to the official state news agency in Sudan, a court order said 27-year-old Miriam Ibrahim be freed after her case sparked outrage around the world. Ms. Ibrahim's Christian-American husband, Daniel Wani, was notified earlier this month that the appeals court in Sudan was deliberating the case, though the government had previously promised she wouldn't be released. But she was. They dropped all the charges and released her. I think it's time to get her out of Dodge. If you don't.
Yeah.
You know, that's a little much there. Also today, the court released the document that the Obama administration used justifying killing Americans. Remember Al-Awlaki? They killed him with a drone, and that other guy, Al-Said. Well, they said they used the law that says it was an Al-Qaeda law, law against Al-Qaeda, and they said that it justified killing Americans because he had joined up with Al-Qaeda.
Well, I guess they'll be throwing that boy up there and that little Italian boy next.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it also said that what they used for evidence was the accusations from security officials.
Oh.
That was evidence. They didn't have a shred of evidence. They never brought criminal charges against Al-Awlaki. Okay, now this document is only in regards to Al-Awlaki. What about his kid? His 16-year-old son? He hadn't joined Al-Qaeda. And you remember what Robert Gibbs said about that? He should have had a more responsible father. That's a reason you kill somebody. Obama should have had a more responsible father, too. We didn't kill him. Matter of fact, we went after someone who threatened to.
That Italian boy might be fixing too. I wonder if he's going to put it on YouTube. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Put it all over YouTube when they bed somebody.
Yeah, well, as far as I can see, that violates the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th Amendments. For real. Yeah. The 4th Amendment, illegal search and seizure, right? They can't touch our stuff unless they have a court order. They never even brought charges against this guy. The 5th Amendment, they can't force a U.S. citizen to testify against themselves in court, right? They never even gave him the chance to plead the 5th. The 6th Amendment says U.S. citizens have a right to a fair and speedy trial. He never got a trial. The 7th Amendment, U.S. citizens... What?
It was speedy.
No, it was speedy, all right. He never got one. The 7th Amendment says U.S. citizens have the right to a trial by jury. He didn't have a jury. He had a judge, jury, and executioner, Eric Holder and Obama. The 8th Amendment, U.S. citizens...
Valerie.
And Valerie, yep. The 8th Amendment says U.S. citizens are protected from cruel and unusual punishment. I think that's a little cruel and unusual. And the 9th Amendment, U.S. citizens may have rights that are not listed in the Constitution. So all his rights were violated here. Maybe he is a bad guy, but that's what they do. See, they want you to hate this guy. He's the bad guy. He joined Al-Qaeda. We should kill him. We should kill him, right? And everybody says, yeah, we should kill him. You do realize that Congress shall make no law that targets a specific person or group. The laws have to be for everyone. If they can kill one American just with accusations, you do remember the Salem witch trials, right? Somebody accused somebody of being a witch and they burn you at the stake. Just accusations, no physical evidence, no documents, no nothing. And a 16-year-old kid who was out looking for his father, he never even got to find his father. He wasn't even in the same country. And they killed him. They cannot make a law for just one person. They can kill you. They can kill DeTilio up there in New Hampshire. JoJo's right. You got to think about that. That boy, the Al-Awlaki boy, he was in a schoolyard playing soccer with a bunch of other boys. Those other boys died too, by the way. They weren't terrorists either. They were just playing a pickup game of soccer with a kid they didn't even know.
Well, we got terrorists in all kinds of places inside the United States of America. Some in some well-protected areas, as a matter of fact.
Well, the ISIS guy that Obama released, he armed him to the teeth, and then he released their leader. And I'm sure the whole time that al-Baghdadi was in custody, he was going through his training and his grooming and all of that. But now he's just had like an unimpeded march across Iraq and into Syria. And Obama and all the weapons came from Obama. Of course, they're Russian weapons, but they were left over from Gaddafi's arsenal, remember? That's why they were using the foreign weapons to arm the Syrian rebels, is so that they wouldn't have American names on them And we would be accused of arming the Syrian rebels.
Yep, 20,000 man pads.
Yeah. And they know that they know that ISIS has Stinger missiles. That's another reason there's no planes in the air right now. ISIS will take them down. So, this is Obama's caliphate, guys. Obama's done more to this caliphate, this Islamic caliphate, than Muhammad himself. Muhammad himself didn't go through that whole area. And remember what al-Baghdadi said on his way out of the jail. I'll see you in New York.
Yep.
Brigitte Gabriel, she's been all over the news, huh?
Yeah.
You all know who Brigitte Gabriel is? She's the Lebanese woman. She always sounds hysterical and shrill. Well, once you get past that...
Very knowledgeable. She's extremely knows what she's talking about.
I have such a newfound respect for her. Let me tell you something. You know, when I first saw her, like I said, I thought she was too hysterical and too shrill. And, of course, it was just passion and her accent, and she speaks very fast. But last week I saw her on the panel, and she said something that struck me as very profound. She said, the silent majority is irrelevant. You know what? She's right. You know, you can be the biggest majority on the planet, but if you're silent, then you don't count. You're irrelevant. That just struck me. You know, I've heard the Thomas Jefferson quote about it doesn't take a majority to win, just a tireless minority. You know, and that was all right. It was a quote, but it didn't strike me the way that she said, you're irrelevant. But she accused CNN of editing her segment that she was on Sunday just to make her look like she was biased and that she was a kook. But she got into a row with that chick Saba over on the Hannity show. Did you see that one?
Oh, I did see that one, yeah.
Yeah, well, the woman knows her stuff. Hey,
I'm
guess who got
somebody somebody else that knows her stuff. You can read her blog is Pamela Geller. She knows her stuff too.
Yes, she does. Pamela Geller, she's hardcore going after them too. She's not stupid. And, you know, women around the world, they should be paying attention to this stuff. Do you want to be somebody's property? Do you want to have to live under a Coleman tent for the rest of your life or just peeking out through your eyes? Do you want your girls beat up? Do you want them married off? You know, your 9-year-old daughter going to marry a 40-year-old guy? You know, you want to be one of 4 wives? And what about all the gays out there? You do know how these extreme Islamists feel about gays, right? There's pictures of gays being crucified, literally on crosses, and being hung in the middle of Iran and everywhere, all over the Middle East. They do not put up with gay people. All right, so when you got this politically correct thing and Islamophobe, there's a word for you, has the same connotations as racist. It's supposed to make you feel bad, and what it does is it turns the perpetrator into the victim. Okay, the bully is now the victim when you shut somebody up using words like racist and Islamophobe. If you don't agree with the beheadings and the honor killings and the stonings and the severe rules and beatings and all of that, then you're an Islamophobe. No, actually, I think you're pretty smart if you don't agree with that. But that's a way to shut you up. The other day, that chick Saba said that there's a Muslim majority in the world. And then in the same breath, she said, well, you know, it's a lot of Americans are picking on the Muslim minority. Well, which is it? There's 8 billion of you. Or you're not a minority. So get off that stick, too. Anyhow, that's what's going on. You really have to know what this is all about. You know, you might not be at war with Islam, but I got news for you. Islam is at war with you. They're at war with you, whether you want to or not. That doesn't matter to them. You're not going to change their mind. You're not going to talk them out of it. You're not going to win their hearts and minds. See, they suffer through this life, and there is no greater glory than to die in the name of Allah. So the fear of death doesn't scare these people. That's like rewarding them. So you have to understand the ideology. Anyhow, I'm not trying to go on and on and on about this, but, reality is that this is a very dangerous situation we're in, and being politically correct is not going to solve it. You have to be correct, not politically correct. You have to step back. You have to look at the entire situation clinically. Look at it like making a ham sandwich. You need ham, cheese, and bread, right? Maybe a little mustard. Well, look at the situation you're in. This is actually a problem. This is how you got to fix it. You cannot bring emotion into it. As soon as you get emotional, you lose. End of story. There's no room for that. Bo Berdahl was released to outpatient.
Yeah. I bet you he's got more guards than Valerie Jarrett.
Yeah.
I bet he is loaded up with protection.
Oh, I betcha. Well, this little story here says Army Sergeant Bo, this is from NBC, Army Sergeant Bo Berdahl has been released from the Texas hospital he was admitted to when he arrived back in the U.S. more than a week ago. Berdahl is now receiving medical and psychological outpatient care on Joint Base San Antonio, Fort Sam Houston, an Army spokesman said in a statement. The spokesman said Berdahl's reintegration process was progressing with exposure to more people and gradual increase of social interactions. It is unclear if Berdahl has seen his parents yet. Berdahl is being counseled and debriefed to ensure he progresses to the point where he can return to duty, the spokesman said. His location will not be released in order to safeguard the reintegration process. Yeah, I don't know what reintegration means, but I don't think that he's out of military custody. And I don't know about him going back to duty. You really think that the guys in his company are going to work with him?
Nope.
Yeah, I think maybe they're trying to get him in shape for a trial or something. But they're keeping everybody away from him. All he's got to do is I don't know. Obama will
wait
pardon
to see
him
how that
anyhow.
plays out. Well, yeah, if he doesn't have some friendly fire problem.
Well, did you hear where he said he walked away? He said that the living conditions were brutal and the leadership sucked. Where did he think he was going to go forward?
I don't know.
Here he is. He thinks he's Rambo, wants to join the French Foreign Legion, wants to fight. Then he gets there, and he's got to sleep in a sleeping bag and carry a rucksack and live with the rest of the guys that are out there. Where did he think he was going? To the Hyatt? A Marriott resort?
I don't know.
So the accommodations sucked. Well, were the Taliban's accommodations better? That's a bogus story. You don't walk away and join the Taliban because the living conditions were brutal. Would you think it was going to be better with them? No, that's a bogus story. That's not why he walked away. I'm willing to guarantee you he was asleep a cell and sent over there. The kid took fencing and ballet. How'd he end up at a forward base in Afghanistan to start with? That was
I don't know.
Too neatly packaged.
I know sometimes they do integrate other companies with other companies, but this was a 101st Airborne company, and he was not airborne, so.
Right. Yeah, so he was just there as a filler for numbers. That's fishy, too. Who knows if he was set up to be a decoy to get that blind sheep back or something. I don't know. But it's just, none of it makes sense to me.
Well, yep.
In Palestine, they're looking for those 3 missing Israeli kids. One of them is a dual citizen with America. He's an American citizen, too. But they found dozens of terror tunnels and weapons caches and all kinds of stuff while they've been looking for this kid. For the kids, all 3 kids. Breitbart says the Israeli military has discovered dozens of suspected terror tunnels and weapons laboratories in the Hebron area during Operation Brother's Keeper, the operation to find 3 teen boys kidnapped by Hamas. Members of Israel's elite engineering unit, Yahalom, uncovered the tunnels and laboratories while searching for 3 teens kidnapped in the West Bank 10 days ago. Some of the tunnels were found by soldiers inside the homes of Palestinians under large pieces of furniture and laundry machines. Using their specialized equipment, Yahalom means diamond in Hebrew, forces participated in dozens of raids on the homes of Palestinian activists across the West Bank, confiscating caches of weapons and explosives, too. They discovered 20 laboratories for manufacturing IEDs, and they were hidden in homes. It says they'd arrive at a home and find a family living on the first floor and a laboratory on the third floor. You know, that's another thing, too, hiding behind civilians. Why do that? You know, you're using women and children and families as human shields.
Because that's their culture. I mean, that's their culture. That's the way they operate.
You know, we put the women and children in a safe place and the men out front. In this, they put the women and children out front and the men in behind. You know, and then they tell us what great warriors and martyrs they are.
Yeah. Well, outside of our military, the men in this world are getting metrofied, or whatever the word is. I can't use the real word. Excuse me. Did you see where John Kerry came out and said he wanted to put transgenders and gays in and make them ambassadors all over the world?
Oh, yeah, that ought to go well. I have nothing against gays. I don't care who they're sleeping with. But, you know, look what happened to Chris Stevens. And they knew he was gay. So, you know, the other ones were killed outright. Stevens was tortured, then killed. Mm-hmm. You know, and they knew he was gay. That was no secret. He was out of the closet. And, you know, you see what's going on at that hotel. The emir there, he owns that hotel over in California that they're protesting.
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
Yeah, well, you know, the gays are protesting that because he said, no, you can't have your gay soiree at his place. So maybe they're coming to the realization, you know, it's not just women and children that have to be afraid of these people. It's gays and Christians and Jews and atheists. You know, you're not exempt. All the atheists out there, they'll kill you too. If you're not, if you're not whatever they need you to be, then it's over for you. And the more politically correct we are, the quicker the invasion happens. You see what's going on in Europe. The French are trying to outlaw it now. It's a little too late for that.
Yeah, it's going to be too late for us, too.
Yeah, well, it's, like I said, when you're not fighting a people, you're fighting an ideology. And I don't think people really fully grasp what that actually means.
I don't think they do either. They do either.
Let's talk about the illegals for a minute.
Okay.
We have an invasion in this country, and it can't be considered anything but an invasion. If you have 48,000 children, 39,000 adults who have just come over since April, allegedly. All right, imagine how many here before that, and how many got by without going to the Border Patrol and turning themselves in to be transported other places. Obama always says that he was caught off guard. They're the party of the eternal surprise people. Everything surprises them. They didn't know squat until they saw it on the news. Well, DHS ad contradicts what the White House claims about being shocked by the illegal children. The other day, one of our colleagues found a document on FedBiz opportunities that was posted back in January. They were looking for escorts to transport unaccompanied illegal minors around the country, and they were expecting 65,000. The contract was for 65,000. Right now they just said we had 59,000 unaccompanied children, so they're almost at quota. How did they know we were going to get 65,000 children in January when they were absolutely shocked in April, in May, in June?
ESP?
Yeah, really. They got to be Miss Cleo over there making the business opportunities. You know, I think we should start checking orphanages down in Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala.
Well, allegedly, there's a whole bunch of them on the other side of the Mexican border being, they're attempting to house thousands and thousands in Mexico that can't seem to get across the border. So there's the same problem on the other side of the border. And I'm sure their accommodations aren't very nice over there either because they're being infiltrated and housed and they're all around all these drug cartels. So it's even more unsafe. But
well, speaking of drug cartels, you're seeing 15, 16, 17-year-old boys coming across the border with tattooed faces with gang symbols and their chest and arms and everything all covered in gang symbols and tattoos, and they're just letting them go.
Mm-hmm.
Those are obvious gang members. I mean, when it says, yeah, there's not enough. Now, our border, remember, it's supposed to be so secure, and we have all this technology on the border, and we got all kinds of videos and drones and everything else over there. How come you can't find 48,000 toddlers crawling across the border? You know why? Because the babies didn't crawl across the border. I will guarantee you Obama airlifted them straight from Guatemala over Mexico, over both the southern and northern border into the United States. As a matter of fact,
what I think too.
Yep. Yeah, I think we should start looking at orphanages down there. They probably unloaded orphanages into the planes, and off they went. In Massachusetts, there was a senator yesterday who said that he learned of the illegals being airlifted into Massachusetts, and that was his word, airlifted. Amazing, huh? Yeah. And he said he learned of it on social media. Yeah, another one who's just totally surprised. Yep. Massachusetts State Senator Richard Moore, he's a Democrat from Uxbridge, stated that state officials were unaware of the plane loads of illegal immigrants who were flown into the state until we started hearing rumors, basically on social media, that planes were being landed. Moore expressed his disagreement with the Obama administration for not notifying Massachusetts officials, arguing, I think we have the right to know. It certainly should be made available. I don't think this is any reason why it should be kept quiet. We should know about it. If it's an appropriate process that's been going on, it shouldn't be a big deal for anyone. He added that since mid-April, 7 flights of illegals have touched down in the state, and argued that while the state is being reimbursed for housing the detainees, he was worried diseases could spread throughout the state's county jails, or if an immigrant was released or if they escaped into general population. Moore also said the state could be liable if inmates inside county jail contracted an infectious disease from one of the illegals housed there. So they're housing illegals in jail. They're being reimbursed for housing the detainees, but they knew nothing about it. So who's sending them the check, and how do they even know a check is coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
People can't tell a good lie no more.
No, not even a good lie. We didn't know they were coming, but we're being reimbursed.
Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't have like a contract and you didn't know anything about it, they just showed up with a check in their hand? That's a bunch of hooey. You know, how'd you know to make room for them in the jail? And how'd you know to make room for them in wherever the hell you're housing them? In 7 plane loads? Okay, you figure 7 planes. They hold at least 150 people each, right?
Probably, yeah.
So that's 750 illegals that touch down in Massachusetts.
What we need to do is all our folks, our boots on the ground that know where some of these questionable, quote-unquote, FEMA camps are, is go do a little drive-by and see if they've been opened up yet. Because remember last January, or was it a year ago, January, they were wanting to put some of them operational, so to speak. And we weren't sure why. Well, maybe we know why now.
Well, funny you should bring that up, my dear, about the camps.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Bruceville, Texas, according to Linda Hahn, a normally quiet country road in Bruceville, south of Waco, bustled with bus traffic for weeks this spring as between 1,000 and 2,000 children were trucked in from the border. The kids, officially known...
This was this spring. This was back in March and April. This wasn't in the last 2 weeks. We need to make sure that timeline's in there.
Right. This is March and April. Okay, so they advertised the escorts in January. In March and April, they were already transporting the children because it says the kids, officially known as unaccompanied alien children, were among thousands swamping the border without their parents from Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. A division of the Department of Health and Human Services, the Administration for Children and Families, is one of the agencies trying to manage the influx estimated at 47,000 this year. It will not disclose where the children have been kept, only that now they are at Lackland Air Force Base and at a facility in the Rio Grande Valley. But Jay Stewart, whose property borders the Green Family Camp in Bruceville, watched the dead-end street that leads to the camp choked with bus traffic, truck traffic, and law enforcement officers during this spring. It was 24/7, Stewart said. Off-duty police officers, Homeland Security, some of them armed. There were a lot of them out there. He said there were two groups of about 1,000 each. The first group was younger kids, 8 to 12 years old. The second group was older kids between 12 and 15, Stewart said. They came in buses and vans. They traveled in groups. They had an escort of 2 to 3 cars. Green Family Camp provides a summer experience for hundreds of Jewish children every year. It has swimming pools, tennis courts, and horseback riding. The camp would not speak to News 8. Jay Stewart said the refugees didn't use those amenities, but they still didn't want to leave. They worked hard to get there, and they didn't want to go back to where they came from, Stewart said. He could see some playing soccer surrounded by guards and others crying, either sad at being away from home or at the thought of returning. As for the neighbors of the camp, some said they didn't notice the traffic too much, and others did. We were concerned about our kids because of the traffic and for security. We normally don't lock things up around here, and we had to. The group left late last month. Now the camp is getting back to its normal role of being a place for kids to spend the summer. The first session began on Saturday. Now, right there it says, the group left late last month. Well, it's only been the last 2 weeks that they've been flipping out about these babies on the border.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. There's your timeline right there. January, they applied for the escorts. By March, they were housing them all over the place. Last month, they moved them from one place because the camp was opening, and they took them back to Laughlin. That's a security risk, too, putting all these illegals in our military bases.
Yeah. I couldn't get on a military base. Could you?
No.
I can't.
I can't either.
And this is the biggest, this is another coup.
Yeah, it's a coup. It's an invasion.
Yeah.
This is absolutely an invasion.
Militia?
I've
the
heard
militia was
stories
headed
about
to the border.
Yeah, well, I heard that they were there. I heard that they were down there in Arizona. There was about 500 of them in Arizona, and there's like 12 groups down in Texas near Laredo that I had heard about. But I don't know their exact locations, where they are, who they are, how many, any of that. I just know that they're there. Speaking of these illegals, I told you that some of them were from El Salvador. Well, the Salvadoran ambassador said the U.S. must respect universal rights. Must respect universal rights. No, my dear. We are a constitutional republic. We are a sovereign nation. We don't need universal anything. Okay, we have a Bill of Rights in this country. Now, from Breitbart, the United States must respect the universal rights of tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors illegally entering the country, according to the Salvadoran ambassador to the United States. We understand the concerns of the U.S. government about the issue of immigration. We are aware that the phenomenon is not a stranger to electoral considerations. However, we must not ignore the fact that children detained at the border have universal rights that should be given priority over the interests of an expedient solution. Ruben Zamora, the ambassador of El Salvador, said to the United States, and he wrote it in the Miami Herald. Children are entitled to receive special protection from our consulates, where we contact family members, collaborate on reunification in the United States and El Salvador, and avoid re-victimization, he continued. So Vice President Biden met with the Central American leaders Friday in Guatemala City, and he said that, he's going to be taking care of them and all of that. Well, let me tell you something, guys. You want to give people universal rights, El Salvador? You do that. You can give the El Salvadorans all the El Salvadoran universal rights you want in El Salvador. How about we send them all back and you handle their rights?
Well,
we don't take orders from El Salvador.
How did they get across? Mexico has the strictest borders in South America as far as illegally entering their country. So how did Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador, how did they get through Mexico? How did they get across Mexico's southern border?
Yeah, tell me how a 9-month-old baby climbed a 16-foot fence topped with razor wire to get in there.
Somebody probably cut the wire at the bottom so it could crawl through. I hope it maybe, I don't know. I'm being sarcastic.
And all the border patrol they have down there. Their border patrol, they have like one every 12 meters or something. I don't know. They have strict border security. You know how they did it? They never went anywhere near the southern or the northern border. They flew right over it.
Probably flew right over the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, well, that's the only explanation. You know damn well 48,000 babies did not crawl through Mexico to get here, 1,800 miles. That's an amazing feat for an 18-month-old. That is
Nor did they ride a bus for a week to get there.
No.
With no one to take care of them other than maybe a 10-year-old or another 8-year-old or, you know.
Yeah,
people
and
can't even make up a good story.
No.
You know, if they're going to just out and out lie to us, they ought to at least take the trouble to make some of it a tiny bit believable. But they come up with some stuff that's like reading. Oh, man.
Yeah. They can't even lie properly. And then, you know, we know that La Raza and the Center for American Progress and a whole bunch of those other Soros agencies, Open Society, all of them, they're advertising, they're setting up the transportation, they're arranging it. A mother didn't just decide to throw her kid over the southern border of Mexico, wish it well, and walk back to work. It didn't happen. You know, they didn't just decide on their own. Then I saw a story in the Miami Herald about this woman whose 10-year-old son is in Houston at some detention center. And she told him not to cry and they would be together soon. And, you know, it was the whole $10 heartbreak story. She's here illegally, too. But she's looking forward to reunification. I got a good idea. Wherever you both came from, go down to Houston, pick up your kid, and head back.
Yeah.
You know, these people, if you want to, you know, Michelle Obama the other day was at a swearing-in ceremony for legal immigrants, a citizenship swearing in. And doesn't the woman stand there and start talking about immigration policy for the illegals? I'm sure the people who were being sworn in, swearing allegiance to the United States, who actually went through the process, who actually wanted to be Americans, and what's not being forced on them. They wanted to. They went through the expense. They went through the process. They followed a lot of the letter. They must have been saying we should have just hopped the fence.
Yeah.
You know, she is standing here at our ceremony. It boggles the mind.
Let's talk about the flip side of this. Let's talk about child sex trade. Let's talk about child slavery. Let's talk about pedophiles. Let's talk about diseases. I mean, this is more than just 60,000 kids showing up in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico.
And we don't even know. You know, that, Jojo, they're telling us 48,000. You're right. You know, they're expecting 65,000. So if some of them are missing, we don't even know.
Well, we'd never know until somebody gets busted running a pedophile child sex slave ring or something.
Yeah. You know, what are these parents being told? What are they promised? That their children are going to be okay? You know, what? This just didn't happen. This is not, you know, some young woman with 5 kids woke up one morning and said, I'm just going to throw them over the fence and wish them well. Good luck getting to America. It's that way. Follow the sun north. Come on, you two. You should be able to pull it off. You've been hanging around here 2 years. You must have learned something by now. God.
I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not funny.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm being facetious, but still, you know, I mean, they're just using your head. You have to figure it out that these children did not walk here. They were not bused here. You don't put a bus full of 2-year-olds 1,800 miles. Can you imagine the bus driver would have pulled over and shot himself? No way. I could put up with 2 miles of a crying kid, never mind 1,800 miles. I'd have given the kid anything. I'd buy it a pony if it'll shut up. You know, yeah, really.
All right.
Yeah, it looks like we got to take a commercial break. When we get back, I'm going to check on the IRS hearing, too, see if it's still going on. I'm so upset that we're on the radio and want to be listening to the drama. Anyhow, we'll be right back. Go grab yourself something to drink and stick around. And hello again, everybody. We're back. You're listening to Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report, right here at PRN Radio Network, the exclusive home of the Watchmen of America program. Hey, Watchmen. Good to see you all out there. I'm Joanne Moretti, and JoJo Norton, my great co-host, is here, and we're happy you stuck around, too. Remember, our phone number is 714-888-7404, and our chat rooms, both at Blog Talk Radio and right here at Patriot Resistance Radio Network, are open for you, too. So say hello to our colleagues, Lynn, Anna, and AstroTurf, and when you get in there, and we hope to see you there. All right, JoJo, we're back. You still around?
All right. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. I checked on the IRS. It's just a peeing contest. It's the same thing, back and forth. You know, the Democrats are sticking up for the IRS, and I got to tell you something.
We're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere in any of these hearings, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I checked over at Twitter, and they said that, you know, some facts have gotten out, and they've been tripping up Koskinen. But Jackie Spear is talking now, and she was saying how they're badgering the IRS witness, and none of the evidence says that Lois Lerner is guilty of anything. And, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. None of the evidence? Of course none of the evidence. They didn't give you that evidence.
Yes.
They gave you everything you didn't ask for, but nothing they asked for. But, you know, as you know, they canceled the backup company that, you know, was working for them, the Sonasoft. And funny, that was 8 days before the IRS officially closed out its relationship with Sonasoft, is when they got the heads up that Lois Lerner's emails are in question, and a bunch of others, too. Their contract with the IRS ended August 31st, 2011. 8 days later, the IRS...
The fifth.
Yeah. You know, doesn't it sound like they had a mole in there? And everything that this oversight committee was going to be looking for, the White House and the IRS were one step ahead.
Now I wonder who the mole could be. Maybe the number two man? The number two
I'm
man?
Thinking.
Something?
Maybe even more than one mole. But, you know, the committee decides that they're going to look for these emails, and all of a sudden the contract is done, and the computer crashes, and then they say they're going to look at these other 6 people's emails, and what a coincidence. All of the hard drives crashed. I don't care if every hard drive in the IRS crashed. That's not how you get rid of emails. You know,
did you hear about Steve Stockman? He's a congressman from Texas who's putting forth a bill. I wish I could think how he worded it. Basically, it's, you know, a bill he's going to put in Congress where, you know, if your hard drive crashed, and so have ours when it comes time to file taxes, or I don't know, it's some kind of funny thing like that.
Yeah, you can avoid paying your taxes if your hard drive crashes.
Yeah, something like that.
I have a vision in my head of some guy with a tow truck running around the office with one of those automotive magnets and just erasing everybody's computer. And it still wouldn't get rid of the emails because they're at an off-site facility.
Well, you can go to the library. You can go to somebody else's computer. You know. I can
get
call
your emails
you on
your
phone
phone.
and say, and it's on your phone. I can say, Joanne, my password is such and such. Can you go check my email for me? And you can do it. Boom.
Right. Not only that, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you just brought something else to mind. When you work for the government and you sign on to one of their computers, you have an access code. So they know it was you who was on that computer, what time, and what you looked at. You know, when I worked at the prison, anytime you logged onto the computer, you had to put in an access code, and there were different levels of security. I was at lower security because I wasn't a CO. I was a chef, but still. When I went on that computer, they knew I was on the computer, where I went on that computer, what I was looking at on that computer.
That's any business. And let me tell you something else. Every business in America has some, I don't know if it's actually a law, it probably is. All big businesses and even small businesses, they have to archive all their emails, because I have a cousin that used to work for the company in Shreveport that archived companies' emails.
Yeah.
So there.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody was in there erasing things or looking around, they know who it is and how long they were there. As a matter of fact, you could print out on the printer a receipt saying how long you were on the computer and where you went, too. So
not only that, companies can shut down certain sites. Because one place I worked found out people were going on Facebook. So they fixed it where none of the company computers could open Facebook. So, you know.
Yeah. Let's talk about this guy Koskinen, the IRS commissioner. Yeah, his name's John Koskinen. He's a major Democratic donor. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. IRS Commissioner John Koskinen is in the spotlight as he's set to further testify to Congress regarding the IRS targeting of conservative groups. It's important to remember that Koskinen has shelled out nearly $100,000 to Democratic candidates and groups. He's been contributing to Democrats for 4 decades, actually, starting with a $1,000 contribution to Democrat candidate for Colorado Senate, Gary Hart, in '79. That's how long he's been donating to Democrats. He's been a reliable donor over the years, contributing a total of $19,000 to the Democratic National Committee. He has made contributions to the Democratic candidate for president in each election since 1980, including $2,300 to Obama in 2008 and $5,000 to Obama in 2012. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has received $3,000 from Koskinen. The Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee received $2,000. And Hillary Clinton has received $3,800 for her various political campaigns. His most recent contribution was $2,500 to Senator Mark Warner. He's a Democrat in Virginia, in February of 2013. He was appointed IRS commissioner later that year and was tasked with revamping the agency in the wake of the criticism. Also, a little fun fact about our boy Koskinen. He was formerly the CEO of Freddie Mac. Imagine that, JoJo? The failed mortgage securities company. Yeah. So he was the CEO of Freddie Mac, too. Took out big bailouts and then went broke anyhow. Yeah. This is the same guy. And the woman who's in charge of the investigation is also a huge Democratic donor. And one of the lawyers who worked for the IRS is now in the White House, at the White House counsel's office. So they pulled her up there to keep her protected.
Yeah.
They didn't leave anything to chance. It's like they stayed one step ahead of this committee. That means somebody inside that committee was giving them a heads up every step of the way.
All this means within the next 24, 72 hours, Eric Holder will come in, or somebody, and they will claim executive privilege because they're fixing to lead all them emails back to the White House. So they're going to claim executive privilege, and then boom, here we are again.
Mm-hmm. AstroTurf says, we had a security code we had to put in the computer each morning when we logged in when I worked for the railroad. If you couldn't get logged on, then you knew it was your turn to get axed. At that point, you were escorted out of the building. The fix is in. It's always been in. She's right. She's right. And they, I said, they stayed one step ahead.
So if it's, we all know your email goes to a server, so is blah, 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 .gov, .org, .gov, whatever the White House or the government server is, does that mean they're all down?
No, just Lois Lerner's and the 6 other people who were subpoenaed.
Yeah.
How convenient, huh? And they got some of Lois Lerner's emails. Remember early on, they kept dropping off her emails and dropping off her emails. Some of those emails fell in between the time that supposedly all the emails were lost. So, they're full of baloney. How could not lose all the emails?
They got the emails where she emailed her husband and said, honey, what's for dinner? That's the emails they got.
Yeah. Yeah, those emails were fine, but anything that was even the slightest bit incriminating, of course, those are gone. So it was a selective crash. It only crashed on the important ones, didn't. I don't know. Let's talk about some politics. CNN says
Let's talk about Hillary's heart. I want to talk about Hillary's heart.
Go ahead, because I got a question for you. Hillary has a heart? I'll be damned. That's the big
She has No, she doesn't have a heart. She has a muscle in her chest that has cardiac tissue in it. That's what she has. I've only read one article, but she doesn't per se have a heart problem. She has a thrombolytic disorder where her blood system, for lack of a better word, is forming clots. And she's supposed to be on an anticoagulant, which she's quit taking or not taking like she's supposed to. So her blood forms clots. And the clots can be anywhere in your body. They can be in your leg, like a DVT. They can be a blood clot to your heart, which would cause a heart attack, a blood clot to your brain, which causes a stroke. And the article I read, she's had several fainting spells since 2009. And so she doesn't, from what I read, have, quote-unquote, a heart problem. But I would like to bring up something we covered 2 years ago on this show, is the little I can't testify because I've got a brain injury because I fell. And, different stories where she fell at and how she got to what hospital, why she was, remember at first it was the stomach virus, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
But, and in this one article I read, they were talking about some kind of little blood clot somewhere in her brain, yada, yada, yada. But when you fall and hit your head, or maybe have a plane crash or something, you can, within, 48, 72 hours, you have a thing called a subdural hematoma, which I certainly don't know if that's what she had. But if we remember the little airplane that went down, a C-12 Huron military passenger transport aircraft. It crash-landed this article, it crash-landed around the first week of December. In the Iranian city of Ahvaz, A-H-V-A-Z, near the Iraqi border. Iranian intelligence agents quoted to confirm that the C-12 Huron aircraft is still in their possession. The U.S. Navy SEAL member reported killed in this bizarre incident. His name was Commander Job Price. But then, remember, he kind of sort of committed suicide a little short time later?
Mm-hmm. I do.
It was investigated as a possible suicide as he died from what the American Defense Department describes as a non-combat related injury. And he was a Navy SEAL, and he was her personal bodyguard, for lack of a better word. U.S. military flight logs recorded by Russian Air and Space Forces confirmed that Commander Price and other members of U.S. Navy SEAL Team 4 left their base in Uruzgan province, Afghanistan, on the flight to U.S. naval support in Bahrain, where they met up with Clinton, and all of them transferred to the C-12 Huron that began a flight path to Baghdad. Within minutes of leaving Bahrain, the C-12 Huron, carrying Clinton and her U.S. Navy SEAL protectors without notice, deviated from their assigned flight path, heading instead directly towards Iran's Al-Waz International Airport, where coincidentally Iranian President Ahmadinejad had previously landed on an unscheduled visit. So anyway, and then shortly thereafter she got the stomach flu and fainted and hit her head and couldn't testify, and then she had she had a little eye problem and wearing the funny glasses and blah, 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 go on and on and on. But from what I read about her quote-unquote medical condition, it's not really it could be a heart problem. If she throws a blood clot in her heart, she's going to have a heart attack.
Right. But it'll be a brain problem if one lands there, too.
Yeah. So we shall see.
Yeah.
We shall see.
Well, I saw a couple of how they have the people walk around the streets and they ask people questions about politics. One of the people that was asked on one of those man on the street interviews was asked, well, what do you think about it? Did you vote for Obama? She says, yeah. Well, how do you think he's been doing? She said he's doing a lousy job. We need some change around here. That's why I'm voting for Hillary next time.
Oh,
what?
my God.
I know.
I saw something that Michelle Obama said we need a woman in the White House. Now, when Michelle says that, knowing the feud that's fixing to go down between the Clintons and the Obamas, that scares me too. What if Michelle runs against Hillary for the Democratic ticket? Wouldn't that be a sideshow?
Well, I saw a story how Bill and Obama were talking. There were a couple of other people around, and Bill was going on and on about Hillary and how she'd be a good president and the first woman president and all that. And those two men really can't stand each other, and the women can't stand each other either. But finally, after listening to Bill go on about Hillary for a while, Obama piped up and said, yeah, with all that experience that Hillary has, I think Michelle would be a good president too, a good candidate too. And Bill shut up.
Oh, my goodness. There's no telling what's going to happen between now and 2016.
Well, CNN says it's sexist to bring up Hillary's shopping sprees. Do you remember what they did to Sarah Palin over her wardrobe?
Uh-huh.
She had a $1,500 wardrobe.
Bought by the RNC, not by her. They wouldn't let her own clothes.
I don't know if you saw the picture of Chelsea Clinton the other day. She had on the leather pants and those LeBron shoes. Those shoes are $1,500.
Wait. Did you see what Scott did to her picture?
No, but the shoes she had on.
God.
The shoes she had on were $1,500 shoes. Not a whole wardrobe, just the shoes were $1,500.
Well,
They're gorgeous
let me
shoes,
just say
of course.
this.
But
When Scott got through with Chelsea's picture in those leather pants, her butt and legs kind of resembled new shift.
yeah,
that's the polite way I could put it.
In case you don't know who JoJo's talking about, she's talking about our graphics guy. He does have a way with pictures. He could take any picture and distort it to be some of the most comical images I've ever seen in my life. Man, he can do some stuff with pictures. But CNN says it's sexist to bring up Hillary's shopping sprees. I thought that she was like a destitute multimillionaire, and she didn't know where her next meal was coming from because she had two kitchens.
Chelsea doesn't care anything about money. She lives in a $10 million home, and she gets $600,000 a month or a week or something for CNN and never shows up to work. And, but she doesn't care anything about money. She doesn't know what money is or where it comes from because we've supported Chelsea since she was 5 years old.
This is true. Well, on Monday's New Day show over at CNN, that chick Kate Baldwin, she blasted all of us, for a supposedly bigoted attack on Hillary Clinton. The group recently attacked the former Secretary of State for being out of touch. If Hillary's going to run for president, she might be advised to take a lengthy sabbatical from her $200,000 a pop speaking tours and private shopping sprees at Bergdorf's to try to reconnect with what's happening here back on Earth. Yeah, but it's sexist. You can't go after Hillary. You know what I got to say to that, guys? Same thing I said earlier. Forget the political correctness. You gotta fight. Let's talk about that for a second, because in 2006, the Democrats took the House and the Senate. Bush was still president. In 2008, the Democrats got a supermajority. That means that they had the Senate, the House, and the White House. In 2010, Democrats still held on to the Senate, and, of course, they still had Obama in the White House, so they had a majority in 2 of the 3 sections. Then, in 2012, Obama got reelected, and the Senate still has a Dem majority. So, I don't know what was really Bush's fault, but since 2006, Dems have been in the majority. We have listened to the experts in political elections tell us how we have to be sensitive and we have to be politically correct and we have to be more like the left in order to win elections. Well, they haven't won an election since 2006. All right? These are probably not the right people to tell us and give us advice. All right? We have been on some stupid high road that it's a box that the left put us in, and we're supposed to stay in there. And if you say anything off color or out of their realm of what we should be saying, then they come after you double barrel. Forget it.
All right.
Forget the high road. You know what?
I have a question. If Chelsea's baby turns out to be an ugly baby, does that mean we still have to say, "Oh, what a cute baby"?
No, JoJo, that's what we call babies. When you look in the carriage and you go, the baby. You can't really tell its mother it's cute because it's not. But, you still got to be nice. So, the baby, what a nice outfit. I don't know. You got to be diplomatic about people's kids, because they get really particular if you can't.
Oh, well, unless you're serious.
You can't say any of the comments the people in my head are screaming right now.
What it does not, if you're Sarah Palin's kid, they say, her?
Yeah, really. Well, anyhow, back to what I was saying. Since 2006, the conservatives, the Republicans, the libertarians, they have been fighting with Marcus of Queensberry rules when the Democrats have been in a full-on street fight. You got to learn how to street fight, too. You can't let them put you in a box. You can't let them shame you and use all their Alinsky ridicule on you. You would actually just tell them if they say, oh, yeah, you're a conspiracy theorist or a right-wing nut job, just tell them you would have to care about their opinion for their mockery to work on you. And, frankly, you don't care, so be gone. They're going to pull this race crap and the gender crap and all of that. And be prepared for it. Learn how to fight. Because since 2006, the right hasn't won any fights. Even when you put Scott Brown in there to be the 41st vote, the Democrats found a way to tack that Obamacare onto a bill that had already been passed as a rider, so they didn't even have to take a vote on it. So they found a way around it. You have to be equally ruthless. You can't say, I'm so nice and I'm going to turn the other cheek. You can only do that once. You only got two cheeks.
Yeah.
So knock it off. Start learning how to fight. Now, Obama's not going to endorse Charlie Rangel. I wanted to bring that up because Charlie Rangel is going absolutely bananas. I think that he should resign now before he gets beat up. But his neighborhood, his area, his congressional district has been revamped, and now it's mostly Dominicans and Hispanics. They don't even know who Charlie Rangel is. So he's having a real...
Well, he didn't get enough signatures on his ballot.
Yeah, and the court let him go down there anyhow. That was Conyers. He's another one.
Sorry, wrong guy.
Yeah, but Conyers, he's on the ballot, and he shouldn't be. He couldn't get 1,000 signatures. If you're an incumbent senator, you've been there for 30 years, and you can't get 1,000 signatures, there's a problem. Maybe America is waking up. Now, in Mississippi, we got problems. All right,
anybody in Mississippi, make sure they vote for McDaniels tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow, McDaniels. Now, Chad Cochran, he's hired a whole bunch of Democrats to vote in this runoff election. He already lost to McDaniels once, but McDaniels didn't beat him by enough, so they have in this runoff. Now, this story is from the Breitbart. It's Cleveland, Mississippi. It says, outside the Bolivar County Courthouse, Carter said he's delivering voters for Cochran in the Republican primary runoff, but voting for Democrat Travis Childers in the general election in November. Experts argue that voting for a Republican in the runoff, but a Democrat in the general election is technically illegal. But the strategy is the linchpin of a desperate bid by Cochran to use Democratic voters to prevail against Tea Party-backed State Senator Chris McDaniels. In Mississippi, voting is more racially segregated than most anywhere else. In 2008, for example, 88% of white voters cast their ballot for Senator John McCain, while 98% of blacks voted for President Obama. But that's not anything new or actually particular to Mississippi, by the way. That happened all over the country. Now, Cochran is facing complaints for trying to go around the Republican Party to win that primary. But efforts have also run into a series of allegations about legally questionable tactics, too. Technically, according to former Department of Justice Civil Rights Division Attorney J. Christian Adams, it's illegal for Democrats to vote in the GOP primary in Mississippi unless they plan on supporting the Republican candidate in the general election. Now, that's not going to happen. And, you know, that brings me back to Brett beating Cantor. I'll bet you anything that there were all those crossover voters in there, too, as well as, you know, people being pissed off at Cantor. But I'll be willing to wager that that was going on there. And in my own article, Obama is a plant, I brought up how all those crossover voters up in New Hampshire took McCain from dead last to the front runner. It was all the Democrats that did that. They already knew who their nominee was going to be. So they went and voted in their Republican primary. In an open primary state, you can just walk in and tell them, all right, I want a Democrat ballot, even if you're a registered Republican, and they'll give it to you. So we got to do something about those open primaries too. Why would you want registered Democrats to vote for the Republican primary candidate anyhow? And vice versa. Why would the Democrats want all the Republicans to go over and vote in their primary, which is something, you know, I mean, if you want to do it, learn how to fight using their tactics, but I don't recommend it. But that's what's going on.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, guess we'll see.
Is that hearing still going on? Oh, yeah, it's still going on. Mr. Meehan is talking now. I wish I knew. Astro says that's what's being proven with this entire administration. They can be corrupt, break the law, revise the laws, and what's anyone going to do about it? Zero. Astro, that's a problem. We gotta get more active. Like Brigitte Gabriel said, the silent majority is irrelevant. We have to be relevant. And we have to be fierce. We can't be nice anymore. You know, I know Americans are really nice people, but you're going to have to get over it for a little while. You're going to have to think as ruthless as them. You have to lose any shred of emotions. Like I said, as soon as you bring emotion into it, you're going to lose. And that's how the left sucks you in. We've all read Alinsky's Rules for Radicals by now, and if not, if somebody points out one of the rules, you'll identify it anyhow, even if you didn't read the book, because we've been talking about it. But it's so obvious what is going on around us. I mean, the Middle East is on fire. The economy's on fire. The veterans are ready to revolt. The IRS is using the full power of the federal government to go after citizens. The same with the DHS. Our border is wide open. And, you know, we're sitting on keyboards. We should be off the couch out the door. You know, and the least we could do is start going after the Democrats. That's another thing we do wrong. Like I said, since 2006, the Democrats have had a majority and at one point a supermajority. But we go after the Republicans to stop them. I got a good idea. Stop voting them in majority. And then go after the Republicans if they don't stop them. But
well, I, for one, think we need to go after every incumbent. I don't care what's behind their name, because to me, ain't none of them doing their job right.
That's true. She's right there, too. You know, it's like you can't tell them apart anyhow. So it's time to put some fresh blood in there. JoJo's right. You know, you got a guy in there 30 years, and you say, we need change. And then you vote him back in for the 32nd time. What? You know, you're not going to get any change there. You got to stop asking the people that got us here to get us out. It's not going to happen. You know, and we can wish and hope and pray for the best, but, you know, you got to make things happen. Don't depend on luck. You make your own luck. Anthony Martin put out an incredibly good article today, and it's important that I read this to you because there's this agency that has just voted itself the power to shut down businesses. You know, they can even shut down the Washington Redskins. Actually, they should, they should just tell the whole league, the Feds, call it the Fedskins. But
yeah, and I'm telling you right now, they do need to change the name. They need to drop Washington.
Yeah, I'd be embarrassed to death to have Washington. I wouldn't even call. I call myself the Northwest Redskins. I wouldn't even call myself Washington Redskins.
Or the National Redskins or something.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the feds wanted Fedskins. This is from Anthony Martin. He says, tyranny expands as consumer agency gives itself power to shut down businesses. In a stunning and unprecedented move, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, under the terms of the Dodd-Frank bill that was passed in haste after the Wall Street meltdown in 2008. Now, remember, I just told you they had a supermajority then, okay? So this was all the Dems. Passed a new rule that gives itself the power to shut down businesses at will and at any time without having to provide a reason. A simple cease and desist order is all that is needed for the government agency to shut down any business for any reason. According to Town Hall, the businesses that are shut down cannot reopen their doors until the issue is resolved, as indicated by special government permission or a direct court order. This could take years, given that the business will then be placed in the American judicial system that's known for its years of delays. Thus, the CFPB order to shut down the doors and windows of a business is tantamount to permanently preventing them from doing business ever again. It says a PDF file that can be found on the CFPB website explaining in detail the rules can be directly accessed. This latest expansion of government tyranny is merely the next phase in a gradual power grab by the federal government, which strips private businesses of their right to engage in commerce. Business owners, from small operations to large, will be placed in financially untenable situations where many will be unable to afford to continue. Coincidentally, the feds had already targeted gun dealers prior to the CFPB order. The Department of Justice has gone after firearms dealers and other so-called high-risk enterprises to shut them down. Their tactic? Smother them out of business by choking banks who lend them money. An entire program has been launched to this effect called Operation Choke Point. But consumer groups and business owners are fighting back. The United States Consumer Coalition is one such group, and it's taking the feds head on. In a special news release, the group stated, this unprecedented rule created by the CFPB grants the agency unilateral authority to literally shut down any business overnight. It's a doubling down of Operation Choke Point, the administration's program to target lawful industries by intimidating banks from doing business with them. This rule allows the CFPB to immediately issue a cease and desist order, which terminates all business practices. And a hearing doesn't have to be granted for 10 days, effectively shutting down businesses for at least 10 days. This is a guilty until proven innocent tactic of the administration that goes against every historical notion of justice under the law in America. The administration got caught with their illegal intimidation tactics in Operation Choke Point, and now they're taking radical steps to ensure the goals of shutting down these lawful businesses are met. The group went further to say that this is a direct multiple agency attack on every free market business in America, and thus every business in America, large and small, should be highly alarmed at what is occurring in Washington with regard to private enterprise. The consequence of such an attack would not only remove the right of individual citizens to operate their own businesses apart from government intimidation, but would also severely impact the national economy by putting dozens, if not hundreds, of enterprises out of business. Most of the jobs in which America is fueled come from small businesses. If they are hamstrung in this manner, the result could be bone-chilling effect on the unemployment, consumer prices, and the overall health of the economy. But the anger and rage being expressed across the country towards a rogue federal agency such as CFPB is palpable. It goes on, but, who is this agency to grant themselves authority to shut down any private business for any reason or no reason at all, without so much as a court order, charges? What? I mean, we got to do something about this, guys. We can't just talk about it. We have to actually make some moves. Oh, boy. That there's ports all along our West Coast, right? Up in, say, Oregon and Washington and other
San Diego.
places. They have, San Diego, major seaports. Well, their contracts with the unions are coming up soon. And the people who run the ports are really upset, really nervous because the unions are doing the same thing. They're already putting out their strike orders, and, they haven't even started negotiations, and they're already threatening strikes. Well, that's all well and good, but there's something else we should consider. Obama signed that agreement with transporting goods and stuff over the Mexican border into the United States with all the trucks and everything, right?
Right.
You do know
part
that
of the
Mexico...
Trans-Pacific Partnership. Remember TPP? And he just had a meeting over the weekend with, I can't remember who, somebody from Asia. So the TPP's back in the spotlight again, too.
Yeah, and they expanded NAFTA, too. And now those trucks can go all the way inside the United States, through the United States, all the way up to Canada if they want. So keep that in mind, that with these transport trucks are already signed in, they can run in the United States. And another little known fact that people seem to forget is just across the border into Mexico from California, along the Pacific coast, the country of Mexico has built a state-of-the-art deep water port and is just about ready to open for business. So all these port jobs, longshoreman jobs, all the labor jobs, you want to strike. Mexico is offering a 12% tax rate instead of a 35% tax rate. They have non-union employees. They don't have a minimum wage. If you're lucky to have a job, never mind start striking and all of that. So before these people put themselves and those ports out of business and out of work, maybe they should consider a couple of factors that have taken place since the last time they negotiated their contract, including...
And don't forget that China owns some part of San Diego port. That's an old story, and I can't remember it. And another thing, during these negotiations, a new incentive is in play. In 2018, a 40% tax on the value of Cadillac health plans above a certain threshold kicks in under the Affordable Care Act, and the union's coverage qualifies. So there you go. There's another thing, a 40% tax on the union's health care plan. And they thought they were exempt. Not.
Yeah. Well, they were only exempt as long as Obama needed them. Well, Obama doesn't need them anymore, so they can go kissing the wind too. But yeah, also that's another thing too.
I can sing that song by Jerry Jeff Walker. Can we sing it?
No. Maybe at the end of the show we can close out with it. But yeah, that's another thing. They don't have Obamacare down there in Mexico either. So, all these illegals coming up here, you're going to see all the legal Americans heading down to Mexico looking for jobs.
Yeah.
The shoe factories are down there, all the way down to Brazil. Brazil makes some fantastic shoes now. They pretty much cornered the market over the Chinese.
Don't forget, we now make Cadillacs in Mexico. GM, Government Motors, opened a $1 couple $1 million, plant in Mexico to build Cadillacs. That was 2 years ago, too.
That's
Government
right.
Motors.
So you're going to see a mass exodus out of the country into Mexico. Maybe we shouldn't put up a border fence saying, how are we going to get out?
Well, that's what Ron Paul. Don't forget.
Yep. And now we come to our last article of the night, and then we can talk small talk. But there's this thing called FACTA, F-A-C-T-A, and this could collapse the U.S. dollar. JoJo sent me this. It's written by Charles Benninghoff. I'm sorry?
It goes into effect July 1st. But it was passed back when, 2010?
Yep,
and we've all
2010, during the supermajority. Yep. The Republicans didn't take over the House until January 2011, so this was passed in 2010, too. But you got to hear this story, FACTA, F-A-C-T-A, okay? It's written by Charles Benninghoff. This is a secret tax that could collapse the dollar. We were just talking about the overseas ports and all that. Well, there might not be any reason to do business with the United States, period. FACTA, a massive tax increase passed by the Democrat majority that controlled the House and Senate back in 2010, is set to go into effect July 1st, 2014, which is next week. FACTA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, could actually collapse the U.S. dollar after it goes into effect. Talk about unintended consequences. Obama is declaring economics war and the rest of the world through this tax increase, and yet most Americans have never heard of it. FACTA was so ill-conceived that if it goes into effect as planned, it could lead to the end of our way of life in America. America could wake up to find that the money in their bank account is suddenly worthless and devalued to the point where they could not buy anything with it. There's a good chance that the House majority will vote to repeal FACTA if Americans raise their voices against it. Many Democrats are starting to back away from this act as well because they don't want a tax increase to go into effect right before the elections. But that's not guaranteeing that the Democrats are going to back this, and you can pass whatever you want in the House. You still have to get it past Harry Reid, and you got to get it signed by Obama. So that doesn't seem likely. Some members of Congress are finally starting to see the writing on the wall as the dire predictions of FACTA are coming true. For example, China, Russia, Brazil, India, and South Africa, that's BRICS, ladies and gentlemen, you should recognize that, are all moving away from using the U.S. dollar in trade with each other and with other nations. This is the most serious threat to America that Obama has ever attempted, and we are just weeks away from this happening. Here's what's going to occur starting on July 1st, 2014. Number one, FACTA forces all worldwide banks to comply with the IRS if they have any transactions in U.S. dollars. Because the U.S. dollar is still the world's reserve currency, all commercial banks must comply with FACTA. In order for banks to comply, either they can spend a fortune segmenting, tracking, and potentially taxing their U.S. dollar transactions by as much as 30%, or they can simply get rid of all their U.S. customers. In other words, the Obama regime is saying to all commercial banks around the world, if you deal in U.S. dollars in any way, you have to give us full, unlimited access to all of these transactions, or you will have to get rid of your U.S. customers. Number 5, FACTA means more and more worldwide commercial banks will move away from the U.S. dollar, accelerating the already rapid worldwide move away from the dollar as a reserve currency. Number 6, FACTA makes it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for you to get some of your money out of U.S. dollars and into more stable currencies by way of foreign banks. Number 7, 2 of the largest banks in the world, J.P. Morgan Chase and HSBC, have eliminated internal wire transfers. Many small banks have reportedly followed suit. This has affected Americans' ability to buy services unavailable in the U.S. if they bank with Chase. Many more banks are expected to outlaw international wire transfers during the run-up to July 1st. These clear examples of capital controls are what a broke and desperate government does when it knows the value of its currency is about to collapse. Astute Americans have seen governments around the globe pull these stunts repeatedly, right before a currency devaluation or collapse. Now it's happening in the United States of America. FACTA is about as unjust as it gets. The value of the money in your bank account could vanish overnight if every foreign country dumps its U.S. dollar holdings. In addition, Obama has given these nations a target date and good reason to do it, July 1st, 2014. Obama is so desperate to reclaim just a tiny bit of tax money that corporations are now holding overseas to avoid the United States corporate tax rates, which are the highest in the entire world, that he will destroy the entire country if we don't stop him. The threat is that serious. Imagine that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and, if you listen to Carol Ray has been breaking this down, bit by bit for 2 years. She is
right.
the expert on all this stuff. She's the one that first told us about the Trans-Pacific Partnership 2 years ago. We've been keeping our eye on that. There's so much happening so fast right now. The stuff we need to be keeping an eye on keeps kind of falling off the cliff. You can't keep an eye on everything.
I know. That's why we have to delegate everything. And I tell you what, JoJo's right. Carol Ray is the best financial guru I've ever seen. She's been on top of this. She's been telling us about this. She's been warning us about this. She's been begging people to prep, begging people to buy gold and silver, put your money in other places. The value of gold is not going to devalue. Gold is still going to be gold. Back in the 80s, if you bought a gold chain for $200, it's probably worth about $1,500 now. So that is probably where you should put your money. And put money in silver, too, because if you're broke and you're out there trying to peddle your gold, people are going to know you're broke, and they're going to try to screw you out of it. So,
well, if you're going to have to
silver
buy
is street
bread,
money.
if you need to buy bread and milk, wouldn't you rather give them a $25 piece of silver instead of a $1,800 piece of gold?
Right. Silver is street money, so have a little bit of that available to you, too. But if Obama thinks... Oh, go ahead,
I thought we were through that. I just wanted to just talk about my little prepping thing, because we have a conspiracy theory going on here in my part of the country. And
okay.
It's 2 to 3, 4 states, Mississippi, Louisiana, East Texas, all in my area. Nobody's tomatoes are turning. Everybody's tomatoes. We're loaded up with tomatoes. They're all green. They will not turn. And it's all over the place. It's even in Mississippi. It's in South Louisiana. It's North Louisiana, Arkansas, East Texas. It's like nobody can figure out why. So, must be a
I don't know.
That's all I know. I don't know.
Well, we're gonna have to look into that.
Anyway.
All right, JoJo. Say goodnight to everybody.
All right. See y'all next Monday. And everybody keep your nose to the grind and help us out, because we can't keep up with all this by ourselves. So we have many, many people that help us, and we appreciate all of you.
We do. We appreciate everybody. I mean, these facts just don't come out of thin air. Hi. Good night, JoJo. Thank you.
Good night. Bye.
All right, everybody. That's all the time we have for today. And as always, we hope you enjoyed our show. To everybody who's listening, all you people on the switchboard who didn't raise your hand, but I see you there, our callers, everybody in the chat rooms, all the cool people in the chat rooms, thank you so much. Anna Lynn, AstroTurf, great job. Thank you to all our colleagues, too, and a special thank you to JoJo, my great co-host. Stay tuned to PRN.